The orbital observation deck of Station Nexus 7 hummed with quiet tension as Ambassador Zephyr Ka adjusted her crystalline viewing apparatus. Her forearms moved with practiced precision, each manipulator fine-tuning the quantum sensors that would record what many considered impossible to witness and survive. The Hegemony Council had sent her here not as a diplomat, but as their most experienced war chronicler, tasked with documenting what could be the final battle in a conflict that had raged for 3 stellar cycles. Through the reinforced transparisteel, the void stretched endlessly, punctuated by the dim glow of distant stars. But today, this empty space would become a graveyard for one of 2 species that had refused to yield to each other: the Krillian Dominion, masters of biological warfare and genetic manipulation, faced off against the human colonial defense force in what both sides had declared would be the decisive engagement. Zephyr Ka had studied both civilizations extensively. The Krillians were apex predators evolved from hive-minded insectoids, their technology based on living organisms that could adapt and evolve in real time during combat. Their ships were not built but grown, their weapons not manufactured but bred for maximum lethality. They had conquered 47 star systems through sheer biological superiority, overwhelming their enemies with creatures that defied conventional physics and weapons that learned from each impact. Humanity, by contrast, seemed almost primitive in comparison. They used metal ships powered by fusion reactors, kinetic weapons that fired inert projectiles and relied on individual decision-making rather than hive coordination. When the Krillians had first encountered humans expanding into the Outer Rim territories, the insectoid commanders had predicted an easy victory. That was 3 years ago. The war had not gone as anyone expected. Humanity's stubborn refusal to surrender had surprised even their allies in the Galactic Confederation. More surprising still was their ability to adapt their tactics with each engagement, turning the Krillians' own advantages against them. What had begun as a territorial dispute had escalated into something far more personal and brutal. Now, as Zephyr Ka watched the first energy signatures appear on her sensors, she knew she was about to witness something that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of warfare itself. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace first, their angular vessels spreading into a formation that her tactical analysis software couldn't immediately recognize. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and what appeared to be a single massive dreadnought that dwarfed everything else in the human formation. The Krillian response was typical of their species. Their bioships materialized like a living constellation, organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as both communication and psychological warfare. The largest vessel resembled a colossal jellyfish crossed with a spider, its trailing appendages crackling with bioelectric energy. Smaller craft swarmed around it like antibodies protecting a vital organ, their surfaces shifting and changing even as Zephyr Ka watched. The silence before battle felt heavier than the vacuum itself. Both fleets held their positions, commanders no doubt making final calculations and issuing last orders to their crews. Zephyr Ka had witnessed 17 major space battles during her career as a war chronicler, but something about this engagement felt different. The humans weren't positioning themselves defensively as they had in previous encounters. Instead, they seemed to be inviting an attack, their formation loose enough to suggest either supreme confidence or absolute desperation. Admiral Vex Thul, commanding the Krillian forces from his flagship breeding mother, transmitted the traditional challenge on all frequencies. His words, translated by the station's universal communicator, carried the arrogance typical of his species. Humans, you have rejected our generous offer to serve as livestock in our breeding programs. Today your extinction begins. Your worlds will nurture our offspring, and your bones will fertilize our gardens. The human response came not from their fleet commander, but from what the communications array identified as a junior officer aboard the massive dreadnought. Krillian fleet, this is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen of the CDF Indomitable. We've prepared something special for you today. Try not to die too quickly. We want to make sure you understand exactly what you're dealing with before the end. Zephyr Ka's sensory organs tingled with anticipation and fear. In all her years of chronicling warfare, she had never heard such casual confidence from a species facing what should have been certain annihilation. The Krillian force outnumbered the humans 3-1, and their biotechnology had proven superior in every previous engagement. Yet something in the human officer's tone suggested they possessed knowledge that the rest of the galaxy lacked. The first shots came from the Krillian swarm ships, streams of acid-based projectiles that could eat through conventional armor in seconds. But as the weapons streaked toward the human formation, something unprecedented happened. The human ships didn't dodge or raise their shields. Instead, they seemed to welcome the incoming fire, allowing the bioweapons to strike their hulls directly. For a moment, it appeared that the humans had simply accepted defeat. Then the impossible occurred. Where the Krillian bioweapons had struck, the human ships began to glow with an eerie blue light. The acid that should have dissolved their armor instead seemed to be absorbed, channeled into conduits that ran along the vessel's hulls like veins carrying lifeblood. Admiral Vexthal's confusion was audible across all communication channels as he demanded explanations from his tactical officers. The humans had done something to their ships, something that violated every principle of known physics and biology. They were not just surviving the Krillian bioweapons, but somehow using them as fuel for their own systems. Zephyr K's recording equipment captured every detail as the human dreadnought began to pulse with the same bioluminescent patterns she had seen on Krillian vessels, but brighter and more intense. The humans had not just adapted to their enemies' weapons, they had learned to reverse engineer and improve upon them in real time, turning the Krillians' greatest advantage into their own weapon. The battle erupted into chaos as the Krillian fleet realized their primary weapons had become useless. Admiral Vexthal's tactical displays showed readings that defied comprehension. The human vessels were not just absorbing bioweapons, but converting them into energy that powered systems the Krillians couldn't identify. Worse still, the human ships were beginning to exhibit the same adaptive characteristics that had made Krillian biotechnology so feared throughout the galaxy. Zephyr Ka watched through her sensors as the human dreadnought Indomitable began to change. Its hull, originally a dull metallic gray, now rippled with organic-looking patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the absorbed Krillian bioenergy. But where Krillian adaptations were slow and methodical, following millions of years of evolutionary programming, the human modifications happened with startling speed and precision. The first human counterattack came without warning. The Indomitable's main weapons batteries fired not conventional kinetic rounds, but projectiles that seemed to be alive. These biomechanical hybrids streaked through space, their surfaces shifting and adjusting trajectory in ways that made them nearly impossible to intercept. When they struck the Krillian ships, they didn't simply explode. Instead, they burrowed into the biohulls and began to multiply, spreading like a technological infection throughout the organic vessels. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen's voice crackled across all frequencies, her tone remaining unnaturally calm despite the intensity of the battle. Admiral Vexthal, you seem confused. Allow me to explain what you're experiencing. Humanity has spent the last 3 years studying every piece of Krillian technology we could salvage. We didn't just analyze it, we improved it. The Krillian admiral's response was a shriek of rage that resonated through the bio-neural networks of his fleet. His ships began to swarm toward the human formation, abandoning their careful battle lines in favor of the mass assault tactics that had served them well against other species. The organic vessels shifted and flowed like a living tide, their surfaces bristling with weapons that adapted their targeting systems with each shot. But the humans were ready. As the Krillian swarm approached, the human fleet suddenly dispersed, their ships moving with a coordination that seemed impossible for individual-minded creatures. Each vessel followed its own trajectory, yet their movements created a three-dimensional maze that channeled the Krillian attack into predetermined killing zones. Zephyr Ka's analysis systems struggled to process what she was witnessing. The human ships were communicating and coordinating through methods her sensors couldn't detect. They moved like a single organism while maintaining their individual capabilities, combining the best aspects of both hive mind coordination and individual creativity. The trap was sprung when the Krillian swarm reached the center of the human formation. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly erupted with weapons fire from concealed human vessels. Ships that had been running silent on minimal power signatures lit up like stars, their weapon systems charged with the bioenergy they had absorbed from earlier Krillian attacks. The weapons themselves were unlike anything in recorded galactic history. They fired streams of energy that seemed to combine human technological precision with Krillian biological adaptability. Each shot learned from the previous one, adjusting its frequency and intensity to penetrate whatever defenses the Krillian bioships generated. More disturbing still, the weapons appeared to be communicating with each other, sharing tactical information across the entire human fleet in real time. Admiral Vexthol's flagship, the Breeding Mother, found itself surrounded by 3 human destroyers that had somehow penetrated his defensive screen, without triggering any alarms. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, creating overlapping fields of energy that prevented his ship's biosystems from adapting quickly enough to respond. The Krillian admiral's panic was evident in his communications with his subordinates. "How are they coordinating their attacks?" "Our bio-neural scanners detect no hive mind structure among them. They fight as individuals but move as one organism." "This is impossible." Sarah Chen's laughter echoed across the communication channels. "Impossible? Admiral, you've been fighting humanity for 3 years and still don't understand what makes us dangerous. We don't need a hive mind to work together. We choose to cooperate. That's what makes us stronger than any biological imperative your species can conceive." The battle turned into a demonstration of human adaptability that left Zephyr Ka's recording equipment struggling to capture every detail. The human ships began to exhibit characteristics that shouldn't have been possible given their original specifications. Their hulls became more flexible, able to absorb and redirect incoming fire. Their weapon systems evolved during combat, developing new firing patterns and energy frequencies that rendered Krillian defenses obsolete within minutes of deployment. Most remarkable of all was the way the human crews themselves seemed to be adapting. Through her long-range biological scanners, Zephyr Ka detected that the human personnel were showing enhanced neural activity and improved reflexes. They weren't being controlled by their technology. Instead, they were forming a symbiotic relationship with it that amplified both human creativity and technological capability. The Krillian fleet, once considered invincible, began to fall apart under the sustained human assault. Ships that had been grown over decades were destroyed in minutes, their adaptive biosystems overwhelmed by weapons that evolved faster than they could respond. The organic vessels that tried to flee found their escape routes blocked by human ships that had somehow anticipated their movements. As the battle reached its climax, Admiral Vexthal made a desperate decision that would change everything. Rather than continue to fight a losing battle, he activated his ship's most forbidden weapon system, a bioplague designed to consume all organic matter within a 1,000-kilometer radius. It was a weapon of last resort that would destroy friend and foe alike. But in his desperation, the Krillian commander was willing to sacrifice his own fleet to ensure humanity's destruction. The bioplague erupted from the Breeding Mother like a malevolent flower blooming in the vacuum of space. Zephyr Ka's sensors registered the energy signature immediately, and her forearms began working frantically to calculate the minimum safe distance her observation station would need to maintain. The weapon was legendary even among the war chroniclers of the Galactic Confederation, a self-replicating biological nightmare that could consume entire star systems if left unchecked. The plague spread in visible waves of sickly green energy, reaching out toward both the human fleet and the remaining Krillian vessels with equal hunger. Zephyr Ka had studied the theoretical effects of such weapons in her academic training. Any organic matter caught within its radius would be broken down at the molecular level and converted into more plague material, creating an exponentially expanding sphere of destruction that could theoretically consume all life in a solar system. Admiral Vexthal's final transmission carried the desperate satisfaction of a commander who believed he had achieved victory. Through mutual annihilation, humans witnessed the price of defying the Krillian dominion. Your adaptability means nothing against a weapon that consumes all biological matter. We die together, but the galaxy will remember that none can stand against us and survive. The green waves of the bioplague reached the outer edges of both fleets simultaneously. Zephyr Ka watched in horror as several Krillian vessels were immediately consumed, their organic hulls dissolving into component molecules that fed the growing storm of destruction. The human ships with their metallic hulls should have been immune to a weapon designed to target biological matter. They weren't. To Zephyr Ka's amazement, her sensors detected that the human vessels contained far more organic material than their external appearance suggested. The crews, obviously, but also integrated biological components throughout their ship's systems. The plague began to eat away at these organic elements, and she expected to witness the human fleet's destruction within minutes. Instead, something extraordinary happened. As the bioplague made contact with the human ships, their hulls began to glow with that same blue light she had observed earlier. But now the luminescence was different, deeper, more complex, pulsing with patterns that seemed to carry information. The plague's advance slowed, then stopped entirely as it encountered the human vessels. Lieutenant Commander Sarah, Chen's voice cut through the chaos with the same unnatural calm she had maintained throughout the battle. Admiral Vexthul, thank you for providing us with a sample of your most advanced bioweapon. We've been curious about its design specifications for quite some time. Zephyr Ka's sensory organs trembled as she realized what she was witnessing. The humans weren't being consumed by the bioplague. They were studying it, analyzing its structure and function in real time even as it tried to destroy them. Their ship's biotechnological components, absorbed and adapted from 3 years of fighting Krillians, were somehow communicating with the plague at a molecular level. The breakthrough came when the human dreadnought Indomitable began to pulse with the same green energy as the bioplague, but controlled and contained within its hull systems. The ship was not being destroyed by the weapon. It was learning to replicate and control it. Through her advanced sensors, Zephyr Ka could detect that the human vessel was breaking down the plague's programming at the genetic level, understanding how it functioned and, more importantly, how to turn it against its creators. The tide of the battle turned completely in the span of 30 seconds. The Indomitable began broadcasting a new signal that spread through the bioplague like a virus infecting a virus. The green waves of destruction that had been expanding in all directions suddenly reversed course, flowing back toward their source with increased intensity. But now they carried new programming, instructions written by human scientists, who had decoded the plague's base structure and improved upon it. Admiral Vexthul's screams of disbelief echoed across all frequencies as his own weapon turned against him. The modified bioplague reached the breeding mother and began to consume it, but instead of simply breaking down its organic matter, the weapon was now extracting information. Every biological innovation, every evolutionary advantage, every secret of Krillian biotechnology was being absorbed and transmitted back to the human fleet. The remaining Krillian vessels tried to flee, but the modified plague followed them, guided by targeting information that the humans were broadcasting through their quantum communication networks. One by one, the bioships were caught and consumed. Their accumulated knowledge and evolutionary adaptations transferred to the human vessels that had become something far beyond their original design parameters. Zephyr Ka realized she was witnessing the birth of a new form of warfare. The humans hadn't just defeated the Krillians. They had absorbed everything that made the insectoid species formidable and integrated it into their own capabilities. Their ships now pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that outshone anything the Krillians had ever achieved, and their weapon systems exhibited an adaptive intelligence that seemed almost alive. But the most terrifying aspect of what she was recording was the casual efficiency with which the humans had accomplished this transformation. They weren't struggling or desperate. They were methodical, scientific, treating the bioplague as just another problem to be solved and technology to be mastered. They had taken their enemy's ultimate weapon and turned it into their own evolutionary advantage in less than an hour. Sarah Chen's voice returned to the communication channels, but now it carried harmonics that hadn't been there before. The human officer was somehow interfacing directly with her ship's biotechnological systems. Her consciousness expanded beyond normal human limitations. Admiral Vexthul, your species made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that because humans are individuals rather than a hive mind, we were somehow limited in our ability to adapt and evolve. You failed to understand that human consciousness is not constrained by biological programming. The breeding mother, now more plague than ship, pulsed weakly as its commander made one final attempt to understand how his victory had become total defeat. Impossible. The plague should have consumed you. No species can control what we have created. It took us 10,000 years to develop the biological safeguards. The human response came not from Lieutenant Commander Chen alone, but from what sounded like dozens of human voices speaking in perfect unison while maintaining their individual characteristics. 10,000 years of evolution, Admiral. We analyzed it, understood it, and improved it in 30 minutes. That's the difference between biological programming and conscious intelligence. The final destruction of Admiral Vexthol's flagship marked the end of Krillian resistance. But Zephyr Ka soon realized it was only the beginning of something far more significant. As the last traces of the original bioplague were absorbed into the human fleet systems, she watched the human vessels undergo transformations that defied every principle of known science and engineering. The ships were evolving in real time, their hulls flowing and reshaping themselves as the absorbed Krillian biotechnology integrated with human innovations. But unlike the slow, methodical changes typical of biological evolution, these adaptations happened with the speed of thought, guided by human consciousness and creativity rather than blind genetic programming. The dreadnought Indomitable had become something altogether new. Its hull now resembled a hybrid between human engineering and Krillian biotechnology, but enhanced far beyond what either species had achieved independently. Weapon systems that learned and adapted with each shot, armor that could regenerate and strengthen itself from absorbed damage, and propulsion systems that seemed to bend space-time in ways that Zephyr Ka's instruments couldn't fully measure. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen's voice had changed as well, carrying harmonics that suggested she was no longer speaking as a purely human consciousness. Her integration with the ship's biotechnological systems had created something new, not a hive mind like the Krillians, but a symbiotic relationship that amplified both human creativity and biological capability. Station Nexus 7. We're aware of your presence and your mission to chronicle this engagement. We want you to understand what you've witnessed today. Zephyr Ka's forearms moved across her communication controls, her crystalline voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. Lieutenant Commander, I am Ambassador Zephyr Ka of the Hegemony Council, assigned to document this battle for the Galactic Confederation. What I have recorded here challenges everything we thought we knew about warfare and evolution itself. The response came not just from the Indomitable, but from the entire human fleet, their voices creating a chorus that maintained individual characteristics while speaking with unified purpose. Ambassador, what you've witnessed today is not just a military victory, it's a demonstration of what happens when conscious intelligence encounters biological programming. The Krillians spent millennia evolving their biotechnology. We absorbed and surpassed it in less than an hour because we chose to do so. Zephyr Ka's sensors detected that the human fleet was beginning to move in formation patterns that seemed impossible. Their ships flowed through space like a school of fish, but each vessel maintained its own identity and capabilities while contributing to a greater whole. It was coordination without subjugation, unity without the loss of individual consciousness that characterized other hive-minded species. The implications of what she was recording began to dawn on her. The humans had not simply defeated the Krillians. They had demonstrated a form of evolution that transcended biological limitations. They could consciously choose their adaptations, integrating useful characteristics from other species while discarding unwanted traits. It was directed evolution guided by intelligence rather than random mutation and natural selection. A new voice joined the communication channel, identified by the fleet's transponders as Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, commander of the Human Task Force. Ambassador Zephyr Ka, the Galactic Confederation needs to understand something crucial. Humanity didn't seek this war. We were expanding peacefully into unclaimed systems when the Krillians attacked our colonies. They gave us no choice but to defend ourselves. The Admiral's words carried weight beyond their literal meaning. Zephyr Ka realized she was listening to a warning directed not just at her, but at every species in the galaxy that might be considering humanity as a potential threat or target. What you've witnessed here is not aggression. It's adaptation. When faced with biological weapons that could consume all life in our colonies, we didn't surrender or flee. We learned. We adapted. We overcame. The human fleet began to demonstrate capabilities that left Zephyr Ka's analysis systems overwhelmed. Ships that could phase in and out of normal spacetime, weapons that could target enemies across multiple dimensions simultaneously, and defensive systems that seemed to anticipate attacks before they were launched. They had absorbed not just Krillian biotechnology, but the underlying principles that governed biological adaptation and applied them through conscious direction rather than evolutionary programming. More disturbing than their new capabilities was the casual manner in which the humans displayed them. They weren't boasting or threatening. They were simply demonstrating the results of what happened when human consciousness encountered advanced, alien technology. It was a controlled exhibition designed to convey a specific message to anyone who might be watching. Lieutenant Commander Chen's voice returned, now carrying harmonics that suggested she was simultaneously human and something more. Ambassador, we know the Confederation has been debating whether to classify humanity as a potential threat species. We want to make our position clear. We have no interest in conquest or domination. We seek only to protect our people and expand peacefully among the stars. The pause that followed carried its own meaning, heavy with implications that Zephyr Ka's recording equipment captured in perfect detail. However, any species that threatens human colonies or attempts to subjugate our people will discover that we adapt very quickly to new forms of warfare. The Krillians learned this. We hope others will learn from their example without requiring a personal demonstration. Zephyr Ka watched as the human fleet began to salvage what remained of the Krillian vessels, their biotechnological systems analyzing and absorbing even the debris for useful innovations. The humans were not just cleaning up after a battle. They were conducting a comprehensive study of everything their defeated enemies had to offer, integrating useful technologies while discarding harmful elements. The efficiency of the operation was remarkable. Within hours, the human ships had processed every piece of Krillian technology and biological matter in the battle zone, leaving behind only refined metal and plastic components that held no biological secrets. The Krillian dominions' accumulated knowledge of biowarfare, earned through thousands of years of evolution and conquest, had become part of humanity's growing technological arsenal. As the human fleet prepared to depart for their home systems, Admiral Rodriguez transmitted a final message that Zephyr Ka knew would be analyzed by every intelligence agency in the Confederation. Ambassador, please convey our gratitude to the Hegemony Council for providing neutral observation of this engagement. We want the galaxy to understand that humanity values peaceful coexistence. We also want it understood that we will defend ourselves with whatever means prove necessary. 3 months after the battle, Zephyr Ka found herself standing before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Confederation, her crystalline form reflecting the chamber's ancient lighting, as she prepared to deliver what would become the most significant war report in galactic history. The circular amphitheater buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from 47 different species waited to hear her analysis of humanity's demonstration. The Hegemony Council had spent weeks reviewing her recordings, their finest scientists and military analysts struggling to understand the implications of what they had witnessed. Traditional models of technological development and species evolution had proven inadequate to explain how humanity had accomplished the impossible, not just defeating the Krillian Dominion, but absorbing and improving upon millions of years of biological innovation in a matter of hours. Chancellor Mordeth of the Draconian Republic, his scaled features betraying unusual concern, called the session to order with a voice that carried across the chamber without amplification. Honored delegates, we gather today to receive Ambassador Zephyr Ka's report on the engagement between human forces and the Krillian Dominion. The implications of this battle extend far beyond a simple territorial dispute. Zephyr Ka activated her presentation system, filling the chamber's central display with tactical recordings of the battle. The delegates watched in silence as the human fleet absorbed Krillian bioweapons and turned them into fuel for their own systems. Gasps and clicks of disbelief echoed through the chamber, as the recordings showed the humans not just surviving the legendary bioplague, but reverse engineering and improving it in real time. Honored delegates, Zephyr Ka began, her voice carrying the formal cadences required for official testimony. What I witnessed challenges our fundamental understanding of how species develop and deploy military technology. The humans did not simply defeat the Krillians through superior firepower or numbers. They demonstrated a form of conscious evolution that transcends biological limitations. Ambassador Yiltar of the Silicon Collective, his crystalline body resonating with harmonic frequencies, interrupted with obvious skepticism. Impossible. Evolution requires generations, not hours. No species can simply choose their adaptations and implement them instantly. Zephyr Ka's forearms moved gracefully as she manipulated the display, showing detailed sensor readings of the human ship's transformations. Respected colleague, that was my initial assessment as well. However, the evidence is undeniable. The humans combined conscious intelligence with adaptive technology in ways that bypassed traditional evolutionary constraints. The recordings continued, showing the human fleet's integration of Krillian biotechnology with their own systems. The delegates watched as ships that had been purely mechanical began exhibiting biological characteristics, their hulls flowing and adapting like living organisms while maintaining the precision and reliability of human engineering. General Kexathul of the warrior castes leaned forward in his seat, his battle-scarred features reflecting genuine concern. Ambassador Zephyr Ka, in your professional assessment, what prevented the humans from being overwhelmed by technologies that required the Krillians millions of years to develop? The question struck at the heart of what made the human victory so significant. Zephyr Ka had spent months analyzing the tactical recordings, consulting with the Confederation's finest xenobiologists and military theorists, searching for an explanation that fit within established scientific frameworks. General, the humans possess something that appears unique among known intelligent species, the ability to consciously direct their own adaptation while maintaining individual identity and creativity. Unlike hive minds that achieve coordination through shared consciousness, humans can choose to cooperate without surrendering their individual capabilities. She manipulated the display to show the communication patterns between human vessels during the battle. The data revealed coordination methods that her analysis system still couldn't fully decode. They developed hybrid biological technological systems that amplified human consciousness rather than replacing it. This allowed them to interface directly with adaptive technologies while maintaining the creative flexibility that drives innovation. The implications of her words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Delegates from species across the galaxy began to realize that humanity represented something unprecedented, a form of intelligence that could consciously evolve beyond biological limitations while retaining the individual creativity that drove technological advancement. Prime Minister Zareth of the Trade Federation raised a question that many delegates were thinking, but afraid to voice. Ambassador, based on your observations, how should the Confederation approach future relations with humanity? Are they a threat to galactic stability? Zephyr Ka had anticipated this question, knowing it would determine whether humanity faced diplomatic isolation or integration into the galactic community. Honored delegates, the humans made their intentions clear during our communication after the battle. They seek peaceful expansion and coexistence. However, they also demonstrated that any species attempting to subjugate or destroy human colonies will face consequences that extend far beyond conventional warfare. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs as delegates considered the implications. Several species had been eyeing human colonies as potential targets for expansion or resource extraction. The revelation that attacking humanity meant facing an opponent capable of absorbing and improving upon any weapons used against them changed the strategic calculations entirely. The humans have essentially broken the traditional rules of technological development, Zephyr Ka continued. They can acquire and enhance new capabilities in timeframes measured in hours rather than generations. This makes them simultaneously the most valuable potential allies and the most dangerous potential enemies in known space. Elder Thyrus of the Ancient Ones, whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations, spoke with the weight of millennia behind her words. In all my years, I have never encountered a species capable of such rapid adaptation. The question before us is whether this represents evolution or something else entirely. The recordings reached their conclusion, showing the human fleet's final transformation into something that transcended their original technological base. The ships that departed the battle zone bore little resemblance to the vessels that had arrived, having integrated and improved upon Krillian innovations in ways that defied conventional understanding. Zephyr Ka concluded her presentation with a warning that would echo through galactic politics for generations to come. Respected delegates, humanity has demonstrated that conscious intelligence, when properly applied, can overcome any biological or technological limitation. They have shown us a new form of evolution, guided by choice rather than chance. The Confederation must decide whether to embrace this development or fear it, but we cannot ignore it. 6 months after her presentation to the Galactic Confederation, Zephyr Ka received an unprecedented invitation that would change her understanding of humanity forever. A formal diplomatic message arrived through quantum channels, bearing the seal of the Human Colonial Administration and requesting her presence at a demonstration on the frontier world of New Geneva. The message was brief but carried implications that sent ripples through the highest levels of Confederation intelligence. The invitation came from Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen herself, though her title had changed to Director of Adaptive Technologies Integration. The message explained that humanity wished to demonstrate their commitment to peaceful coexistence by sharing some of the innovations they had developed since the Krillian engagement. More significantly, they were offering to establish formal technological exchange programs with interested Confederation species. Zephyr Ka's transport arrived at New Geneva 3 weeks later, her diplomatic shuttle escorted by vessels that bore no resemblance to the human ships she had observed during the battle. These craft moved with fluid grace through space, their hulls shifting and adapting to optimal configurations for different flight phases. They were clearly the result of human-Krillian technology integration, but refined and evolved far beyond anything she had recorded during the conflict. The world itself defied her expectations. New Geneva had been a frontier agricultural colony before the war, its settlements scattered across vast prairies and connected by simple transportation networks. Now, as her shuttle descended through the atmosphere, she observed cities that seemed to grow from the landscape itself, their structures flowing organically while maintaining clearly human architectural principles. Director Chen met her at the landing facility, and Zephyr Ka immediately noticed the changes in the human officer. Chen's appearance remained essentially human, but her movements carried a fluid precision that suggested enhanced neural muscular coordination. More significantly, she seemed to be in constant communication with her surroundings, responding to information that Zephyr Ka's sensors couldn't detect. "Ambassador Zephyr Ka," Chen said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to New Geneva. We're honored by your visit and hope to show you how we've applied the lessons learned from our encounter with the Krillians." As they toured the settlement, Zephyr Ka observed integration between human consciousness and adaptive technology that surpassed anything she had imagined possible. Buildings that adjusted their internal configurations based on occupant needs, transportation systems that anticipated demand and optimized themselves accordingly, and agricultural systems that seemed to communicate directly with both crops and farmers to maximize efficiency. Director Chen,